Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
McCrispy strips are now at McDonald's. I hope you're ready for the most dippable chicken in McDonald's history. Dip it in all the sauces. Dip it in that hot sauce in your bag. Dip it in your McFlurry. Your dip is your business. McCrispy strips at McDonald's.
Hey, difference makers. I have a really exciting update for you. Many of you know that for the past few years, I've been writing over on Substack. Some of you have been over there. Some of you haven't yet. But there I've written some reflections, some behind the scenes thoughts, deeper dives into global leadership, equity, and the kind of topics we often explore here on the podcast together. Well, today I launched paid subscriptions for the very first time on Substack at laurieadamsbrown.substack.com. So I'm very excited because I've been sharing all this for free for years, and I'm so grateful for your support along the way. But, let's be honest. Women deserve to be paid for their work, especially women of color, for those of you listening, and who are out there often expected to serve and teach and lead without compensation. It's awful. But launching paid subscription is one small but bold way I'm pushing back on that narrative. Because the truth is, your voice, your labor, your difference making matters, and so does mine. So here's what this means for you. If you're already a paid supporter on Patreon, you don't need to do anything. I've given you a free gift subscription to my Substack for a limited time. Just my way of saying thank you. Check your email or head to patreon.com/aworldofdifference to get all the details. And if you're not a subscriber on Substack yet, this is the perfect time to join us. You'll get access to thoughtful written content that complements what you hear on the show. And for a limited time, you can subscribe with 20% off the lowest price Substack allows. This community is built around belonging, global voices, leadership that lifts, and content that challenges and inspires. And I want your voice in that room. So if you've ever thought, I love what she's creating, but how can I support more deeply? Or if you've ever wanted to ask, could you write more about that topic? Well, this is your moment. Head over to laurieadamsbrown.substack.com and become a paid subscriber or a founding member if you want to help build this new space with me. Thank you for making a difference. Let's keep changing the world, one brave voice at a time. Welcome to the A World of Difference podcast. I'm Laurie Adams Brown, and this is a podcast for those who are different and want to make a difference. Hey there, difference makers. Today's episode is a wake-up call. We're pulling back the curtain on a crisis that's costing us big time, and it's not getting the attention it deserves. Let me ask you this. Why are we still losing women in STEM? Despite all the talk, all the initiatives, all the investment in STEM education, the reality is we're bleeding talent. We're taking smart, capable, driven women into these environments, and then suddenly they're gone. So what's really going on? I've got an absolute powerhouse joining me today to break it down for us. Andrea Mohamed is the co-founder and COO of Quantum Bloom, a company that's not just talking about the problem, they're fixing it. Before founding Quantum Bloom, Andrea was the VP of Strategy, Innovation, Marketing, and Communications at a major science and research organization, where she led a 3,000-person transformation, managed a $10 million innovation portfolio, and helped grow revenue from $400 million to $750 million. So she's the real deal. We're going to dive deep today on why women are leaving STEM and what companies need to do right now to turn that ship around, and how women in leadership can drive change without burning out. And you'll also hear how Andrea made the bold leap from corporate leader to co-founder, and how that decision is shaking up the world of STEM retention. This is the kind of conversation that's going to challenge you, inspire you, and give you the tools to be a part of the solution. So buckle up, because here's my conversation with the unstoppable Andrea Mohamed. Hi, Hi, Andrea. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you today about women and STEM and ways we can make a difference together. A very warm welcome to A World of Difference.
Thank you so much, Lori, for having me. I can't wait to dive into the conversation.
Yes, well, I wanted to start off with sort of a little bit of a fun question. Do you have any places that you like to travel? Have you traveled in other countries? Do you have a favorite country that you like to go to?
Well, I love to ski. So it's like I like to go in the winter where there's snow, and I have gotten to be a snob. So I like to be in Colorado and Utah, and I've learned that East Coast skiing is not great skiing, but until you kind of get that champagne powder, you don't know what you're missing. And so I do love to ski. I just got back from the Dominican Republic. We were celebrating our 20th wedding anniversary. I got back on Wednesday. It was fantastic.
Congrats.
We hadn't been there in over 20 years, and it's changed a lot. I generally like to have a place where it's like I can relax, but also do things. It's like sitting on a beach is never gonna satisfy me for too long, so I always have to have some activity. But yeah, I don't think I have a favorite place, but I like to explore for sure.
Well, those places sound amazing. And some people feel like they have to choose between mountains or beach. And I don't feel like I have to choose. I do have a strong preference for the beach because I grew up in the Caribbean. But I am in a family where my husband and all three of my children love skiing, and we go to Tahoe a lot. And there's a ton of snow. And even though I grew up in the Caribbean, it is so beautiful and I really love it. But I'm not a skier myself. Altitude sickness is not my friend.
It's not mine either. And as I've skied better mountains, it's become an issue. I'm like, oh, okay, I can't do this until 2 days in, go up to the top. But it's like you learn, and it's like, and the technology is so much better, and the clothing's so much better, and you can stay warm in sub-zero temperatures. I just love it.
No, that's true. It definitely has gotten better over the last 20 years for sure. Well, speaking of technology, you are a champion in STEM education and have a lot of things that you've worked on for a while now to help change the game when it comes to STEM for women. But despite huge invested money in STEM education that we're seeing here in the US particularly, we're hemorrhaging women in these tech careers. I sit here in Silicon Valley. This is a constant conversation. I'm wondering, what are the real reasons behind this exodus that you're seeing? And what proven strategies can companies implement to reverse this trend?
Yeah, so I'd love to spend a little bit of time just kind of setting the stage on just how big of an issue this is. So when you look at STEM jobs in general, they're growing 3 to 5 times faster than all other job categories if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And that's before any reshoring or onshoring that happens, due to policy changes in Washington. If we bring back pharmaceuticals, if we bring back automotive, if we bring back semiconductors, all those are STEM intensive and STEM adjacent. And so that 3 to 5 times faster is before any of those policy changes come into effect. So when we talk about a STEM shortage, it's really interesting to think about, is it the pipeline shortage in the education system, or is it the retention of STEM educated talent? And I think the answer to that is both and. But what we really see in the data when it comes to early career women in technology, we know that they're entering male-dominated spaces. We know that it's not been the most welcoming and hospitable place for women to be. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a whole lot of progress in that space. And I think we're actually starting to see a retreat from progressive policies, which is, really nonsensical when you start to look at that STEM shortage. But women used to leave technology around mid-career, 35. It was about half of all women left technology by 35. The data now tells us that women are leaving sooner. And so there's a generational effect. So we see that 68% of women leave technology now by the age of 30 and 20% in the first 12 years. So when we think about what's driving these just really startling statistics, I think that there's layers. There's layers and layers of like what's really happening. If you look at it from a theoretical perspective, there's something called the social cognitive career theory. And fundamentally, it's, where do I have exposure? How do I choose my careers? And it's where am I exposed? Where do I think I can be successful? Where do I sort of, it's a combination of what's happening within me. Where do I feel like I can be successful? And then what are the signals that are happening once I'm there that reinforce that or undermine that belief system? And so when you kind of start to look at what's happening with women in technology, they're getting more and more belief systems that they can be engineers and IT professionals as you start looking at what's happening in the education system. And yet they land in work environments that are still chilly to them. And so What we can do about this, I think, is a couplefold. One is we have to start looking at cultures and what's happening at the ends of this leaky pipeline, and really start with that end in mind, where organizations need to become magnets of talent. How are they able to attract and retain all sorts of diverse talent? What are their policies? What's the culture like? How do they deal with bias? All those types of things. And then there's also this within women. Like, it's not that women are broken. And I never want that to be the message at all of what comes across from this conversation. But we have a playbook that when we are coming through school, keep your head down, do good work, good things will come. That largely is true. It's like you can follow a syllabus and you know how to get an A. It's like we see women who are outperforming men across all sorts of disciplines. And so there's this kind of sense of I know the playbook to be successful in school. The challenge is that playbook doesn't work at work. And no one tells us that. And so within women, it's like we need to unlearn some of those things that made us wildly successful as students, because they aren't going to serve us well when we get to work. And those are all things about learning how to have boundaries. It's like learning how to promote yourself, learning how to talk about your work, learning how to build and influence other people and build relationships. It's not that I just keep my head down, do good work, good things will come. It's that I have built the right relationships, and the people that have, power and influence over my career know what I'm capable of doing because I've told them, and other people recommend. So there's a process of how do we build that agency, confidence, resilience within women, while also starting to work on the environments that they land in. So I don't think there's any magic bullet. And I think that we really have to be thinking about environmentally what's going on, and then how are we building women up so that their belief system is that they can thrive in these careers.
I really love that two-prong approach, and I see that in so many other areas as well. And some people will discuss things around sort of, imposter syndrome, for example, but it does seem to pathologize women in particular, because when they do these research projects on women and men and who's experiencing more imposter syndrome, well, it's really not a shock to many of us that women are more likely to experience what they're labeling as imposter syndrome when you're going into a system that wasn't built for women. It was built by men for men, and currently is, even as you mentioned, rolling back some of the ways we were starting to make some progress to include women in better ways. And so, I prefer to not pathologize women nor myself and blame women. Like you said, it's not women that are broken. It's, it's a systemic exclusion syndrome more than it is imposter syndrome. And so looking at the system, how can we both, like your two-prong approach, how can we change the system to be more inclusive, because we know it leads to better innovation, that diversity is going to be good for business, good for STEM, and then also helping women know that, maybe what got you to be valedictorian and get you on the honor roll while the 7th grade boys were being sent to detention because they were being disruptive, maybe those 7th grade boys are out there doing startups because they're breaking the rules,
right? And
you were taught to be agreeable. So how does that resonate with you?
Yeah, all of that resonates with me. And I love that. I love your framing of imposter syndrome. I cringe kind of every time it comes up in a women's forum where it's like, tell us about a time you had imposter syndrome and how you navigated it. And I, there's a great graduation speech that was done that, really kind of breaks this down. It's like, it's not a pathology of women. It's like our sort of lack of confidence or whatever it might be is a very normal reaction to every signal out that they're experiencing to say, you don't belong here, you're not good enough, you're smart enough, you're too loud, you're too quiet, you're assertive, not assertive. Like, there is so many signals that women sort of get on a daily basis that any normal person would question, at the volume and rate in which we receive that, on whether or not this is a place for us and whether or not we feel like an interloper or somebody that does belong. And so I think that the reframe is really important about imposter syndrome. It's like, it's a systemic issue. It's not a within person. I don't have a disease. You don't have a disease. But I think that on the flip side, it's like, how do we not let those external forces, influences, pressures start to become internalized? That is the trick that we need to start instilling in women. Is like, how do we keep distance from externally oriented judgments, direction, whatever, on who you are, and much more agentic, not to get into AI terminology, but to be more focused on agency within yourself to be that barometer, right? That you are able to deflect or to be able to appropriately label when you experience something. Oh, that's systemic bias. That's not a me thing. Or that's a Joe thing. That's not an Andrea thing. If we carry all of the systemic bias, if we carry all of bad behavior of others as our own personal shortcomings, of course, we're going to feel like we don't belong here, right?
Oh, yes, 100%. Before we hit record, we were talking about just women physically carrying things around the world, like water on their heads and babies and all of the groceries or whatever. And then also the emotional load of workplaces and families and communities. And so, of course, it's going to be more overwhelming for a woman. And when we think about a woman working in STEM, for example, starting out at, 25 and ideally going till 65, maybe longer, that's a, 45, 50-year career, and to see them dropping out 10 years in such an early stage is troubling. And so we definitely want to bring our brains around this. And you are one of the few women who've actually made it into leadership in this area, in this field. And so what responsibility do you believe actually senior women leaders have in both creating the pathways for the next generation, and how also can they effectively drive systemic change without burning themselves out, considering the load that they are expected to carry?
This one I find to be such a complicated issue. When women have arrived at whatever C-suite table, executive team, I kind of have these personas in my head that I've started to put labels on that path. There's sort of like the more traditional path where it's like women arrive and they have beat the system on the system's terms. Right? They are not working for systemic change. They think because they did it, you can do it. They have assimilated. Just yesterday, I was very frustrated. Just yesterday, I was in a women's leadership event all day. The advice to take up golf and drink scotch was made from the stage. It took everything in me not to immediately interrupt the conversation. And I did at the end call out this outdated thinking, and I got applause from the audience. And it was hard. I mean, these were really powerful women that have really made it, but that is really outdated. And I heard in my kind of that kind of persona, that person who beat the system on the system's terms. And then I think about the graduation beyond that, where it's we're all told to be adaptive. And it's to know the culture, to read the room, signal detect, and when to push, when to back off, all those types of things. And you start to become Gumby, right? Where you're just adapting, who's in the room, who's not in the room. And then I see sort of moving toward more the empowered women, where it's these are the people that are starting the ERGs for women, and they're supporting policies for new mothers and parental leave and all those types of things. And they see the value of what women bring into corporate environments, whether it's around community, compassion, all sorts of things that are more traditionally female-oriented traits, not that they're exclusively. And then though, to me, the final frontier for women who have made it needs to be women who are using their power, privilege, money, resources, whatever it is, to change the system, right? That they are actively putting their capital on the line, whether it's political capital, real capital, whatever it is, to say, we are going to dismantle this system brick by brick. I am going to risk my personal comfort to do that for the next generation. And it's very, very hard when you get to that level of leadership to rock the boat and drive change. And I have a ton of empathy around that. Because the higher up you go, the bigger the target is on your back. It's actually not smaller. I used to think the higher up I went, if I got to this table, I'll finally be recognized, supported, validated, whatever it is. And really, I just became a bigger threat. And I didn't expect that. And so when you become a disruptor at a high level, they're coming for you because there are vested interests in you not disrupting the status quo. And so the target is bigger, your mortgage is bigger, your bonuses are bigger, there's more at risk. And so sometimes you see these highly accomplished, powerful women holding back, and they aren't being the change agents that everybody coming behind them needs to be. And they instead coach down to drink brown liquor, no sports, and play golf. Right? When really we need those women who have all that power to be funding other women in their startups, to be the one that calls out the executive that said something misogynistic in an open forum. They need to be using their political power. And I think that they have to be prepared for the consequences. I was that person. I was that person in my organization. And it's like, and I had to be ready to walk. I had to be ready for them to say, Andrea, you pushed too far. You said too much. You talk about the elephant in the room too much. It's time to go. And in order to do that, women need to have really strong networks so that if I lose this job, I'm able to leverage my network to go find the next opportunity. And they need what I call FU money in the bank. Because in order to take risks, it's like you have to be prepared for someone to really call you on that and send you on your way, and not to have yourself financially devastated if you do that. But we need more of that courage, that real courage to be bucking the system. I'm just done at this point of women with power not using it to drive real systemic change.
It's very well said. I sit on a board called Justice Survival in DC. We've been working to pass the ERA. And when we look throughout history, even just with suffrage, both here in the U.S. and in England, I like to visit there. They have some great statues of women who fought there for it. Rights weren't given freely. Change doesn't happen of that nature freely because people will hold on to the status quo as it benefits them. There's a lot of work that has been done that we stand on the shoulders of women. RBG was great in giving us our bank accounts in 1975. And as a result of that, the ripple effects of the freedoms that women could now have to have agency around our own money. And as you said, I think, I also sit on another board called How Women Lead, and we have How Women Invest. And we're on Fund 3, and I sat yesterday in San Francisco and heard pitches from women founders in the AI space here. And it's really exciting. Also, if people are just wanting a practical way, there you can go download the Robinhood app if you're not an investor and invest in WCEO. It's just women CEOs of companies, and you can invest for as little as I think $33. Give it to your niece as a birthday present. It's investing in the future, and we see that investing in women-owned business actually is very financially beneficial for us when we also gain wealth with that. So I love how you're talking about that, and I love that you're giving very practical ways women who achieve this kind of power can use it in ways that really flip the script on what we were told probably from the time we could understand language. Maybe we were a year old, 6 months old, when we started to pick up on messages that said, be a good little girl, right. Don't cause your parents problems, sit there and look pretty. Oh, aren't you so cute when you smile? Oh, I love your hair bow. And so the boys were getting told, oh, you're all boy, look at you running, great job. And they were getting praised on their outcomes from early ages. And we were being praised for being agreeable and pretty. And so those messages, they reside in our bodies. So asking women when they finally achieve this seat of power, it's a huge ask. And yet we know that if you have gotten there from all this hard work, that you also, we believe that you have the same ability to do the hard work that what you're asking them to do, Andrea, which is really use that for good.
Yeah, I think we have to start recognizing the risk of inaction. We're very tuned into the risk of action. Women see what happens to the women, like, the tall poppy syndrome, where it's like, they talk about the tall poppy syndrome with women, where it's like, if you're the poppy that grows the tallest, someone's coming to chop you down. And sometimes it's other women, right? And so we know the risk of standing out. We know the risk of when we're brave and we say the thing and do the whatever. We have to start looking at the flip side of the risk of inaction. And the risk of inaction, I'm sorry, is, not to get political, but the risk of inaction is what's happening today. The risk of playing by corporate rules and norms and all those types of things rather than disrupting them and making them really better is it. And I have an 11-year-old daughter, and I have women that are in, our leadership development program here at Quantum Bloom. And it's like, I will never tell any of these young people that it's like, go learn to drink scotch and play golf and talk about Duke and Tar Heels. Like, we've got to move beyond that. And P.S., it didn't work. It didn't work. So if the last 30 or 40 years was all about playing that game, where are the fruits of that labor? And we can say to little bits of progress and things like that, but it's like we don't have progress relative to the evidence of what it means to have women in leadership. It's like it makes no sense. It's like women in leadership are better for the bottom line. It's like it's better for society. It's like we have all of these data points. So it's not a logic argument anymore. We can't logic ourselves out of this bias. We are going to have to fundamentally dismantle it, right? It's not play the game, it's change the game. And it's just, I'm just so on fire about this lately because I see what's happening around the world. And I'm like, it is now. It is right now that we need this call to arms of women with courage and resources to do these things. No one's coming to save us.
Absolutely not. And, we even grew up with the superheroes being the men and the women were the sidekicks. But it's time for us to understand that women have this power that we are told to minimize and to make it palatable or even be agreeable and not. There's even some research around, women in the workplace and how often we don't share our strong opinions for the very same reason you're mentioning. It's risky. Men can share strong opinions and go back and forth. And the way society views that here in the US in particular is favorable. It makes him look hungry for leadership. It makes him look educated. It makes him look like leadership material and has potential for growth. But a woman is seen as a threat somehow, not exclusively, but there's a lot of nuance there. But I think many women listening will resonate with holding yourself back from a strong opinion because society has been telling us that for a very long time. You, however, were VP of Strategy, Innovation, and Marketing at a major research organization before co-founding, Quantum Bloom. And so what was that transition like? And how did your experiences in corporate America fuel your mission to really revolutionize women's retention in STEM?
Yeah, so I worked at, it was about a $1.3 billion organization that primarily did social science research for the federal government. They're going through some really tough times right now as a government contractor, but in the areas like education, climate change, health, justice. They had a large group that worked on international development with USAID. And so I was surrounded by scientists, right? I loved all the sort of knowledge, expertise in the building. We were 65% women. And yet at the time when I left, there was one woman on the C-suite, right? So the pipeline was there, but the glass ceiling, right? And then there's also the glass cliff, right? And so you have women who are put into, I took a lot of roles that were brand new roles that didn't have, so I was the first strategic digital marketer that the organization ever had. I brought in system process change, like culture, all sorts of things around how to create a digital marketing machine. There was like a central corporate communications function that was very limitedly resourced, and everybody got their one paragraph on the website, and they weren't mandated to drive growth, right? It was brochureware, those types of things. I was in the biggest business unit charged with creating a growth engine, and I had this kind of constant conflict. Didn't know I was walking into a place of that the conflict was sort of baked in and that I'd be butting heads with corporate, but that's the way it went. And yet still found a pathway to be successful. It's like I was that adaptable leader. I would go pre-sell an idea and I would get everybody on board, and I knew when to push and I knew when to pull back. And the number of times I was told, Andrea, you have to thread the needle, which just puts you in an absolutely impossible situation where you have to make everybody happy, right? And I was so good at it. I got really good at it. I was known as such a change agent, and yet I didn't burn bridges, and I had really strong relationships and people liked me. Imagine being a driver as a woman and likable. That was such an emotional toll on trying to constantly be aware of absolutely everything that I did and absolutely every way I did it, right? Every approach that I took. And it made me very successful. It's like my boss ended up becoming the CEO for 3 years. I was his right-hand woman, driving strategy and innovation, helped grow the business from $400 to $750 million. It's like he used to call me the puppeteer and the power behind the throne, which are really interesting ways of framing your female leaders. And then when he became the CEO, I thought I was going with him. I thought there was going to be an opportunity where the things I had done in his business unit to make the business unit and himself personally successful, that he'd want to scale that across the institute. And instead, I was told at the end of a very long transition year that was pretty terrible for me, that I had outgrown the company, that I was ready for a C-suite role, but no one was making space for me. It's time to move on. And it was heartbreaking. I spent 11 years total at the organization, and I built teams, like super high functioning, authentic teams. They were such I think back to the team now, and I'm like, every person on that team like showed up, like they worked hard, they delivered, they were experimental, and they learned stuff, and they'd fail, and then they'd do it better the next time, and very human oriented and authentic. And it's like, and just, I led the way I personally was never led. And so I left this long way to get to the transition of what I'm doing now, and I needed a break. I did not realize how toxic that had been for me. I had convinced myself that everything I was doing was a productive struggle, and it was not a personal sacrifice. And the reality was, it was more personal sacrifice than productive struggle. Other people benefited from my struggle, where I had to fight and claw for every bit of recognition, every promotion. I had to take on additional responsibilities for 6 months before I got the VP title, like all of the things. And the more that I hear that's experience of so many women who reach that level of accomplishment, and it's just a different logo on the building. And so I took time off. I had this whole moment of like, what am I going to do? Do I have another round of corporate in me? Should I hang my own shingle? I'm really good at like systems level thinking. I'm a Swiss Army knife. I'm like, should I go be an operator for, portfolio companies with PE? I had these different things. And then entrepreneurship was not on the, like truly entrepreneurship besides being a consultant wasn't on the table. And a close friend of mine did some matchmaking and kind of reintroduced me to my now business partner. And she had been a career technology executive, ironically had worked at the same company I did. We knew of each other, but didn't run in the same circles. And she had been working on this solution to the early career exodus of women in tech for the better part of like 8 or 10 years, but never brought it to market. And so she showed me what she had. And I was like one of the first people she showed stuff without an NDA. She was very protective of her things. And I looked at it and I'm like, oh my God, Anne, I'm like, a dude would have launched this 3 years ago. What are you waiting for? And she talks about it now where she's like, she had a product that needed jet fuel and I was jet fuel in need of a mission. And so we decided to kind of Thelma and Louise it about 2 years ago in August. And then we went to market a year and a half ago. And it's I'm so aligned to what we're doing. It's like everything makes sense to where we are right now. And yet I feel like corporate America has got to get better. Although I don't ever want to go back into that space, and you never say never, but it's like it has to be a force for good. It can't just be done in startup land. And so part of what we're doing right now, right, with Quantum Bloom is like, how do we create a groundswell literally from the bottom up of women who are prepared to lead and thrive and do it authentically. And it's just, everything's in alignment. I'm in complete values alignment. Everything I do every day, I feel like it's worth it. I'm the poorest I've been in a very long time and the happiest I've been in a long time.
Well, there is so much to say about values alignment because it does wear on you in a way that nothing else does, to work in an environment where, I mean, maybe you agree with 2 of the values on the wall, and maybe none of the values on the wall are really part of their policies and procedures, because, work culture is more than a vibe. It's every decision. It's the corporate comms. It's what are the behaviors? How do people actually behave in this workplace toward women, toward people who maybe the system wasn't originally made for, of all types? And that's really the culture, is the actual behaviors, more than what people say. It's really, their actions. And that's true of organizations. And so that can really wear on you, whether you're in a personal relationship with somebody that your values aren't aligned with, or whether you're in a relationship, a work relationship, where you spend way too much time trying to morph yourself and chameleon yourself, as women are taught to do, to keep shape shifting in a way that makes you palatable and able to be promoted, taking on the assignment 6 months before, in ways that, I would be curious to know, as you compare yourself in that situation and as you've worked with other women in your current situation, how is that different for men versus women when they're getting promoted? What are they being promoted on versus how we see women be promoted? Are they having to do another role, 2 jobs for free for 6 months before they get promoted? How is that different for them?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's a lot of sort of corporate lore where we talk about men get promoted on potential and women get promoted on results and outcomes and being proven, right? And I've certainly seen that, right? And the challenge is like, even when you prove yourself as a woman, you have to keep proving yourself, right? It's like, and I think that I've talked about how like men take the escalator or the elevator and you're taking the stairs. And I saw really, you kind of know the high potential emerging leaders, your peer group in an organization, right? And I kind of knew who kind of the movers and shakers were and the people that did really good work. And nothing to take away that men can be highly, accomplished, do great things, but their paths are smoother. And I had someone that worked for me who was a freaking rock star. This guy was a rock star. He could do anything. And he was about maybe 10 years my junior. He had not built all the relationships that I had built. He didn't understand all the political kind of drivers on what was happening. And he was a couple levels below me. And it was real, but he was a doer. He was like build the deck. It's like, kind of McKinsey-esque kind of like stuff where he could take something out of my head and put it on paper, make it super consumable, great at presenting, all sorts of things. And I saw, like I had just gotten VP, right? And I was proven, like I had built stuff, done stuff, built all these relationships, had a track record a mile long. And then I see this guy come along and he's awesome. We'll never say he's not awesome, but it's like, he just was invited in to spaces that made our dynamic, like who's in charge, me or him? And he's 2 levels beneath me, right? And it's like, and I just saw my executive peer group bring this person in. And then when I had redirection for him, right? Or say, hey, you're missing this whole other piece. You're kind of, it was like I was somehow out of line for holding him to be accountable to me, right? To my vision of things, my way of doing things. And I remember we kind of came to, there was a variety of different things that kind of happened. And it was like, and it came to blows where he's like, he told me he was quitting. Though he told me, he didn't tell me he was quitting. He told me he couldn't work for me anymore. And I remember when I went to my EVP, and my EVP said to me when I told him relate, I'm like, he is very entitled. He has access that it's like the executive team. He is not on the executive team. He doesn't have all the context. He's included on all of our emails. Undermines my ability to share what information I want, when I want to share it, all these types of things. And when this person said he couldn't work for me, my executive vice president, my boss said, well, I sure as hell don't want to lose him. It wasn't at all backing me or saying, I understand, Andrea. It's like, you have worked your tail off to become VP. We need to give you the space to be able to lead your team the way that you want to. And it's been inappropriate how we have brought in a more junior employee into all of our executive conversations. You just got here, right? And it's like, and he, and he's amazing, but he had access and privilege that he's not the only awesome employee we ever had. I'm one of them. I had other members of my team that never had that access or privilege. And it's like, and so it was just, I saw it play out like under my nose. And it was just so illustrative of like, and the other thing too, it's like, there's this really interesting data out there where I was a high performer. This person was a high performer. I loved having him on my team. He could do stuff, but it was about respect and roles and not to be, it's not like I don't want to, or I want to hold a bunch of like a hierarchy, right? But man, I need to establish myself. So anyways, long story, it's like you look at what kind of feedback high performing women get relative to high performing men. Have you seen this? Where it's like the highest performing women, like 78% of them get negative feedback on their performance review relative to 2% of high performing men. And like not a typo, 2% versus 78%. So these are your star performers in an organization. And for the women, that feedback is focused on their personality, right? And even in that dynamic that I experienced, I had to be so cognizant of the way I handled it, right? And in truth, it's like when I had the kind of come to Jesus with him, I didn't handle it well because it had been brewing. And I acknowledge that I didn't. But man, it's probably the first time at that point in like 6 years that I didn't handle a meeting well, right? And so, and again, our bar and our tightrope and our need to be so freaking good all the time. And you believe it. For me, it's like I was so bought into looking for someone to give me a pat on the back and say, Andrea, good job. Like to be worthy of, and those are my deep, dark demons, right? To be worthy of someone's support, validation, whatever. And I think the big switch for me came when I just stopped on a dime and asked, is this organization, this boss, this company worthy of me? I am done proving myself. It's like I am proven. I am not the problem, and you aren't going to convince me anymore that I am, right? And it was like, are you worthy of me? And that flip of being internally guided rather than externally validated was huge. And now it's like, if you thought I was a threat before, giddy up, because Andrea is like out of any cage. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, and it feels absolutely like a freed like bird, right? That can fly where she wants to fly or do whatever, but it's like isn't constrained by all of this constructed gender socialization.
So powerful. I know people listening to this, whether they're women, whether they are men, and they have women in their lives where they have seen be held back, whether it's their wives or their daughters, or they themselves are suddenly realizing, oh, wow, maybe I've been that guy that was on the escalator or elevator and while women took the stairs. I know I've seen what you're saying so many times, where women who have worked so hard, built all the relationships, dealt with every performance review being a knock on their personality, which is fundamentally something you cannot change. And they've dealt with all of the tone policing and maybe you should say this in a different way. Whereas on performance reviews, typically men aren't getting that same feedback. And so all of that brings you mentally down. It's not necessarily imposter syndrome. It's just another microaggression and a chip at you as a person, instead of your outcomes being the discussion. So, men who have been brought in and are great high performers, which to be fair is easier to be when you're on the elevator as opposed to the stairs. But even with that, all things being equal, say both men and women are in this elevator together and they're both able to have that wind at their back and the privilege. Even with that, I've seen it again and again where men get invited up way higher than their level of expertise very early on if they see high performers. Whereas if they see a woman high performer, often you will see her work being given as credit to a man, where she won't be invited up 1 and 2 levels into an executive meeting that she doesn't necessarily belong to in her level. And if she asks in a way that same man would ask, it's huge likability points knocked against her. It seems too audacious or too ambitious, and it really hurts her ability to be perceived in ways that we expect women to act. Whereas a man will be rewarded for being hungry and asking to be in that meeting. And so if you're a man and you're listening to this and you haven't been aware that privilege exists, of course, no one's maybe explained it to you. Right. But we're here as women saying this is the different experience, and we don't expect men to know what it's like to live in our bodies and have our experiences, but we've experienced very different things. And so if this is an aha moment to you, maybe go sit and listen to a woman coworker and invite her into the meeting, and maybe one she's not supposed to be in, and give her that privilege that you have been given. There are ways men can be allies and help change this for us. How have you seen opportunities for men to be more involved in helping change? Because we often get told, as you mentioned earlier, women, you're broken and you need to fix yourselves. And so have you seen men be able to make that shift and show up in any situation?
Yeah, and I think it's not just women that experience a lot of what we've been talking about, Lori. I think people of color, regardless of gender, experience these things. So, it's not like women have a lock on sort of the discrimination in the workplace, but we are half of the workplace. And I would say we are all experiencing the things. I am really, unfortunately, men are not stepping up to help men be better men. I don't think that there's a lot of healthy role models. I think toxic masculinity is a real challenge. I think it's bad for men. I think it's bad for society. I don't think men are thriving. I think that men have their prescribed social roles and they face just as many challenges. Men are facing isolation. The next generation is, they struggle with friends and relationships. All generations of men, frankly, have struggled with that, but especially now that they can absorb their lives into technology in the virtual world, it's like even more human connection is being lost. And I think that there's a lot that we need to be doing to address some of these issues about men being able to be authentic, men to be emotional, living human beings, right? And to shed some of the expectations around them as well. I unfortunately do not see a lot of men truly being allies, because in my estimation, allyship is not the man that says, oh, well, I have a daughter and I have a wife and a sister, and it dawns on them that their daughters are facing these things in the workplace. These men have likely had women in their charge for decades and did nothing, right? Yep. And so but wherever the inspiration comes from, if it's having an emerging young talent that's a daughter, great. But recognize that allyship is visible, it is active, it's daily. And I see really too much in word and not enough in action. And it's kind of like, I hate to say this, but it's kind of like when a dad babysits their own kids, or a dad like changes the diaper, and there's kind of like, yay, you parent for doing a dad thing, right? It's like
such a low bar.
I see that as well on male allyship when there's very little things that are like they show up to the International Women's Day event and it's like, yay, you, right? You showed up and it's like, no. What were you doing to say, hey, we need to fix this policy. We need to address that inequity. I'm going to proactively, as the head of HR, look at whatever, like pay inequity, and I'm going to be transparent about it. And I'm going to say, we're not paying our women enough. We are going to do these things. I just heard, unfortunately, about an organization in advanced manufacturing where they had done an internal study about inequity within their gender inequity, and they have all these data and results, and now they're not going to let them see the light of day. It's like you went all that far to like do the visible thing, to like gather the data, to build the evidence, which you're not going to gather the data if you're not then planning to do something. But the climate has changed so much. And it's a company run by male executives primarily. The risk is too big and they're paddling back, right? I wish I could point to really strong male allies that are doing the thing. There's one company that I always think of as being the exemplar in this space of like inclusion, belonging, and performance-based culture, and that's e.l.f. Cosmetics. Nothing to do with technology, but e.l.f. Cosmetics, if you watch the way they show up in the world, if you watch their brand campaigns, if you watch amid DE&I blowback and the CEO is on, whatever 24-hour news channel saying we're committed. And then you also look at their stock performance, and it's like quarter after quarter, like 25 quarters, they're just killing the street expectations. And it's like, and I would imagine they have no trouble whatsoever attracting talent, retaining talent, because they are a company living their values. And it's a cosmetics company headed by a male executive, right? And it's like, but 75% of their board is female, and it's something like 40 or 50% diverse beyond gender as well, right? And the way that you see the C-suite talk to each other in their visible, and I'm like, that's a male ally for all, not just women, but for humanity, for people of color, for all the walks of life. I'm like, there's someone that walks the walk, and there's so few of them, and that's really unfortunate.
It is unfortunate. I did get to meet Tarang Amin. He's the CEO of e.l.f. We gave him an award last year for How Women Lead at our annual event in downtown San Francisco, as giving them an award for their ad campaign, where they had this campaign that said there's too many dicks in the boardroom, because Yeah, because there's more men named Richard or a derivative of that name on corporate boards than women. And because I was on our Get On Board Leadership Week committee for our Leadership Week last year, we were trying to get women on corporate boards for these reasons, because at those seats of power, we need those ethical decisions to be driven by women. It's good for business. It's good for humans. It's good for those of us who not only buy cosmetics, but buy almost every product out there. And it's a lot of women who are buying these products. So we definitely, our perspectives matter. Well, this has been such an enlightening conversation. I've really learned so much from your perspective. I've been inspired by who you are and your authenticity as you've brought that into leadership, really owning your voice and your agency and inspiring others to do the same. If people want to reach out to you, how can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. My name is Andrea Mohamed, Mohamed. Oftentimes I get a lot of extra M's in there. My company is Quantum Bloom. It's quantumbloom.com. Those are the two primary ways that you can get in touch with me. I am very open. I'm a very open networker, and I have met so many amazing people. Lori, you responded to LinkedIn post I had. This is how this came to be. And I love the serendipity of meeting people from all over the world and having points of connection. And so I do encourage people to reach out.
Thank you so much for this conversation, Andrea. I'm going to have you hang out with our difference makers for an exclusive there with one more question, but it's been great to hear about your story and what you're building and to the future of work.
Thank you so much.
Wow. Can we just take that in for just a minute? Just let that soak in. Andrea just gave us the blueprint, and it's not just for companies, it's for all of us. If you're in a position of leadership and if you care about the future of STEM, or if you're just tired of the same old status quo, this is your call to action. We can't keep saying, well, this is just how it is. Andrea's story shows us that bold action is possible, that culture change is possible, and that retention isn't just an HR metric, it's a mission. So here's your challenge. What's the one thing you're going to do differently after hearing this? Who are you going to lift up? Who are you going to support? And where are you going to get loud about this issue? Let's keep the conversation going. Share this episode with 5 people who need to hear it. And if you're feeling really fired up, leave us a review. It helps us reach more people who are ready to make a difference like you. Until next time, keep showing up, keep standing out, and keep making a difference in your corner of the world. Thanks for listening. Now let's go make it happen. Thank you so very much for joining us today on A World of Difference. Whether you're tuning in from across the street or across the globe, I want you to know this. Your voice matters. Your story matters. And the difference you're making in the world is real. If this episode spoke to you, would you take a moment to subscribe, rate, and share the show with 5 people who need it too? When you share, you're not just spreading a message, you're building a community of people who believe in empathy, equity, kindness, and the power of listening to those who are different from us. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. What resonated with you? What's a question or a story you'd like us to explore next? Reach out anytime, because this isn't just my podcast. This is our conversation. Remember, you were made to make a difference. So let's keep showing up together for ourselves, for each other, and for a world that needs all of us. Until next time, stay curious, stay kind, and keep making your world a little more whole. Here on A World of Difference, we talk a lot about what it means to show up with courage, especially when the world tells us to stay silent. But here's the truth. Healing isn't meant to happen in isolation. We all carry stories of joy, of pain, of resilience. And sometimes we need a space that's just for us, a space where we feel safe to process, to breathe, to be. And that's why I believe in therapy. And that's why I'm so grateful to partner with BetterHelp, online therapy that meets you wherever you are. BetterHelp matches you with a licensed therapist based on your unique needs, whether you're dealing with burnout, grief, relationships, or simply trying to make sense of your story. Because you matter, and your story deserves to be heard. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 10% off your first month at www.betterhelp.com/difference. Again, that's betterhelp.com/difference, because you don't have to walk this road alone. If you've been feeling stuck, uninspired, or just plain over it in your career, this is your wake-up call. It's time to stop waiting for that right moment and start making moves, because no one is coming to rescue you. If you want to check out the Mastering the Career Pivot, my brand new masterclass is designed to help you take control of your career pivot with confidence, and land a job you actually love. This isn't some fluffy, follow your dreams nonsense. This is real strategy to get unstuck and take action now, right now. Here's what you get. 1 hour of video training with me, breaking down the exact steps you need to take. 1 hour or maybe 2 hours, depending on your process, of self-paced exercises to map out your career pivot plan. A free career pivot guide to walk you through the process. A clear, actionable roadmap so you can stop second guessing and start making moves. And if you want to go even deeper, you can grab the Pivot Package, a powerful set of tools, including a detailed workbook and 3 must-have spreadsheets to track your job search, networking, and applications like a pro. And let me just say, if you're going out there expecting to just apply for a job, the first job, and get it, maybe you're one of those people and maybe you do. But if you're like most of the rest of us, you get a job based on people you know. And statistically speaking, that's true, as well as in my own lived experience and career journey. So networking is really a huge part of it, but a lot of us don't know how. And so a spreadsheet where you can track that, break it down, figure out what to talk about. I have some sample interview questions where you can do informational interviews. There's so much there in the Pivot Package that is part of my own journey that helped me when I did a career pivot several years ago. So here's the deal. This course will save you hours of frustration, second guessing, and aimless scrolling on job boards. Not helpful. You don't have time to waste, and your future is waiting. So let's get after it. Go to loriadamsbrown.com/career pivot and sign up for Mastering the Career Pivot today, because your next chapter, it's not going to write itself.